Hello and welcome, one and all, to the Week in Review with the superlative Doooovid, where we discuss all manner of subjects of interest, from meta-analysis of ongoing internet feuds to consciousness studies, all handed over to the star of the show, the one and only Doooovid.
Hey, thanks a lot. I think this week I'm going to do the song first before the story because I want to talk about Janmashtami and Krishna. So I'll start with a Hebrew song. In the Hebrew calendar, there's kind of dispensations where it's considered certain times of the year have certain modes, and the last 3 weeks were a mode of judgment, and culminating with the fast that was I guess it was two weeks ago, and last Sunday was the fast, the destruction of the temple, and then there's 7 weeks of consolation till the new year, and there's certain readings. So this week in synagogue, anyone who went to synagogue, we read from Isaiah chapter 40, and the opening of Isaiah chapter 40 is the Hebrew words Nachmu, Nachmu, Ami. Comfort, comfort my nation, says your God. Bid Jerusalem, take heart and proclaim unto her that her time of service is accomplished, that her guilt is paid off, that she hath received the Lord's hand double for all her sins. You're the prophets proclaiming the time for redemption is now, the time of the atonement, and the negative things that happened due to our sins have passed, and now we could return and fulfill all of our goals. And then verse 5, and the glory of God shall be revealed. All the flesh shall see it together, for the mouth of the Lord hath spoken it. That, the end of the days, God's glory will be revealed to everyone, and all the flesh together will come before the word of God. So there's a nice tune. Nachmu, Nachmu, Ami, Yoimar Elohechem, Dabru Alev Yerushalayim, Akiru Lehakim Al Tzvah, Nachmu, Nachmu, Ami. In verse 5, it'll be revealed the glory of God. We'll see all the flesh together. The Niglu Kavoid Hashem Baruikal Basar Yagdav Kipi Hashem Diber. For the mouth of the Lord hath spoken. V'niglu Kavod Hashem. V'nigla kavod Hashem, Rui kal basar yagda, kipi Hashem diber. Okay, so hopefully our period of test and trial, like I've been monetized and things are growing and moving hopefully in the right direction. So hopefully the time of test and travail is over and a unified voice could come forward and say the suffering has ended and the time to collect the reward for the good deeds and the hard work has came. This Friday is Janmashtami, which is Krishna's appearance day for those people Hindu inclined who me and Jennifer both have affinity towards the deity Krishna. And famous devotees, disciples of Krishna, had this tradition of debate. And there was this concept of a unification through scholarship. Within Judaism, it's been very difficult because there's so many sectarians, but you could imagine a messianic vision of Judaism that would unify Christianity and Islam, or like the prophets say, all righteous people will stand shoulder to shoulder together in the worship of the same God. But in the Hindu tradition, you had these great scholars that would travel around and have these disputations, debates, and would be able to unify various sects under different deities through their deeper understanding. Would, from some esoteric level, would be saying like your school, meaning I work for your boss, from like a unified monotheistic level, that I'm a servant to the servant to the servant to the king, so to say, the king of kings, the king of the universe. And there's a mission that we're all on. And even though it may appear that we're in opposite courts, in reality, we're both support structures for something bigger. Like a pyramid or something where you could see two pyramids that look like they're being set up so people could wage war against each other. However, in reality, they're just both support structures for something to be put on top of, so to say. So that was the history of disputations. One quick story, like Ramanujacharya, I believe, when he was young, he had a spiritual master that had given him the secret mantra, and he said, this mantra is very powerful, and you chant it, and it could affect the cosmos and the energies by saying it. But the one condition is you can't tell anybody. And the first thing he did once he got it, he went out and started telling people, and he said, he couldn't control himself, that if it would benefit people, why should he not give the secret to people if it's going to benefit them? And so hopefully within that spirit, we're going to be talking about the week in review and some of the problems in the streamosphere and the standstills, and how we're trying to push progress forward, come to understanding, get deeper ideas in these valuable disputations. Where one last thing before I hand it back to Church of Entropy, the famous Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, about 350 years ago, said, how could you tell if a piece of wisdom is true? And he said, if the piece of wisdom helps you understand other things that you were confused on, that it's likely to be a true piece of wisdom. If it unifies confusion and doubt that you had on other issues, that through understanding this thing, now other things start to fall into place. And hopefully that's what's going to happen in the streamosphere, where we're coming through ideas, we're meeting people, and the pieces are slowly coming together to push progress to a higher level.
Yeah, that's great. That reminds me of a website that I'll share the link in the chat here. It talks about two Indian reformers, Shankaracharya and Dayananda, who performed debates and essentially reminded people about their roots. Because, I think with Shankaracharya, there was a lot of Buddhism around, and he sort of encouraged people to go back to the Vedic tradition. And same with Dayananda, who specifically, his famous debate was about whether the Veda endorsed idolatry. And he took the negative on that and was received very poorly. People threw garbage at him, and they were very angry because they loved their idols. But in the end, they admitted he was right, and that there was no actual sanction on idolatry. And that was just something that people had kind of fallen into through spiritual degeneracy. So he was able to do a lot of reforms there. And that's one of these sort of tropes that you see throughout history, is religions having been pure, then degenerated, and then been reformed in some sense down the line and going back to their original roots. So yeah, if people are interested in that, they can click on the link that I've shared in the chat. It's definitely an interesting story just to see how much influence one person can really have when they have a good understanding of things. And like Doovid said, they could kind of bring things together and give more clarity, because you're offering knowledge on a kind of a deeper level. And makes it
unification.
Yeah.
That a person has to understand the wisdom extremely well to unify things that to your average person seem too much in opposition, that God forbid, it's going to have to be fought out, or one idea has to prevail. But a deeper scholar, the great minds of the generation could come, actually we need both of these parts functioning together for a greater truth.
Yeah, absolutely. So we were just talking, Doovid and I were talking before we started the show about how we kind of get bored with some of these streams, unfortunately, because they're not, they're just sort of going in circles. They're not progressing forward any new ideas, or things are sort of not, basically, it's interesting for a while. Like we kind of mentioned the Luke Ford stuff, and then eventually it becomes a bit more mundane and less interesting, because you already kind of know what's going to happen before the show even starts. So one of the channels I recently subscribed to was Dr. Renee, and I liked what she was doing, where I think she made up a Jeopardy style game where the panelists had to pick a category, and then she would give them a clue, and it was like somebody, it was describing some streamer, and the people on the panel had to guess who she was referring to. So I thought that was really cute and interesting. And that's the kind of thing I'd like to see going forward, among others. I was thinking we could do a game where we like imitate people who are famous on YouTube, and then other people try to guess who we're imitating. So maybe we could do something like that sometime down the line, just for fun, on one of the other streams on my channel. Just to go into my own week in review, I've had a great week. I'm loving OBS. I find it so much fun to be able to get in touch with my creative side and make these intro videos. I've been working on a few more, so keep that interesting and fresh for everyone. I have made some appearances on various streams, which I restreamed on my own channel, because I noticed some people, they do like to take their videos down, and so they don't stay up for more than a few days. So I just like to have a record. Notably, there was a conversation I had with Simon that we met through Claire, and when Cade and his gang came onto her show, and he's interested in quantum mechanics. So he asked me on a show about how slit experiments work, and that was a very interesting conversation. Kind of got into the deeper aspects of quantum philosophy and things like this. So that's definitely worth a look. He was asking some very good questions, and so maybe people, if they check that out, they can get inspired to ask questions of their own. Because I think for a lot of people, they're interested, but they're not exactly sure how to formulate questions, because they don't understand the stuff well enough to even ask a question. So maybe just taking that as a inspiration going forward. We'd love to hear audience questions so that we can answer them specifically and really get people engaged, and hopefully get some new visitors to Church of Entropy.
Yeah, so if you want to do the week in review, I think Claire's stream that got taken down is pretty interesting. There was a lot of ideas in that, and if Claire comes, she could possibly shed some insight on that. But just a quick week in review. I'll do screen share just so people could see what I'm talking about. So you can see on my channel, not much went on. I did a chess stream, and then I had it in real life. There was a big deportation rally protest, and then I had my Deshaun Marquell. We were live on the scene, and then we talked about it, reviewed the video. So I think people see Rashida Tlaib was very popular in the news this week, because President Trump directly attacked her, and she was supposed to go to Israel, and then Israel rejected her and Ilhan Omar's application to visit there. And she was in the national news, and she's in Metro Detroit. So I went down to a local protest against deportations. For the logistics, you have ICE, which is a federal agency that operates immigration, deportations for people who have immigration status issues. And then you have local police departments that technically are under the federal control, but basically serve the local. So you have a lot of local agencies, especially in blue state, that will refuse to cooperate with ICE because it's a blue state and they don't support the deportations. So this protest was in Dearborn, the large Arab place, and we had a bunch of Jewish groups, a bunch of liberal rabbis, speeches, and we had Congressman Andy Levin, Deborah Dingell, and Rashida Tlaib there. And so it was an interesting video. Not that much viewership. We got some singing songs. This wasn't any public unrest or civil disobedience. It was a peaceful legal rally just in front where there were speeches. And we have some chanting that we sing, and you could see Rashida Tlaib up here close and live on my YouTube channel. And then similar to these protests, this was in the news, this car ramming, which this was also largely a Jewish pro-immigration protest, but this one was actually civil disobedience where they were blocking an ICE detention facility, and you can see they're kind of like sitting on the floor blocking the way, and this ICE officer comes up and basically rams the protesters. And I think like 2 people were injured, sent to the hospital. So I mean, he didn't kill anybody, but it was, and then people get pepper sprayed. So the protest I participated in was just a protest. There was no civil disobedience. We weren't blocking any traffic, as opposed to this protest that I'm not even sure where it was, in New Jersey or wherever it was, that they actually were doing a civil disobedience and blocking the path of ICE to get into their detention headquarters, and the police broke up the protest. People were injured, although this officer was fired or quit, the one that ended up, but I don't think any criminal charges were brought against him. So I've been covering these protests for a while. So in my real life, I went down and covered that. So anyone who, reading about Rashida Tlaib, she has liberal Jewish fans here in Metro Detroit, and I went down and documented that on my TV, and then me and Deshaun talked about it. So that was basically it for my streaming this week. I'm still doing some research for Ask the Rabbi on various topics, mostly like this soul and reincarnation, but I don't have those ready yet, so no major streaming. I think it was Thursday morning or Wednesday morning. I checked my computer after I got my stuff done in the morning. Maybe it was like 10, 11 in the morning. And I saw that Claire was streaming something about Brundle, even something about Church of Entropy. The stream was taken down, and it was kind of about Jennifer and her beta orbiters, probably most specifically referring to Gandalf. And I ended up hopping on towards the beginning.
Just real quick, David, before you get into that, I wanted to let the audience know that we have been given a link to the plenary talks that for the Consciousness Conference that you were interested in seeing and you hadn't found. And so Mitchell Porter, friend of the show, sent us that link, and I'll share it in the chat if anyone's interested in having a look at those talks. We'll cover those once we've been over them all. So yeah, I'll hand it back to you. I just wanted to mention that real quick.
Yeah, we could talk about that a little bit more. I'm in session 4 out of 9, so we'll talk about that more. Some interesting stuff. Encourage people to watch through that to see the latest scientific investigations and current state of research on the various topics. So this stream was called "Why Church of Entropy Persists in Associating Yourself with the Social Retard in Preference to Me." And God forbid, I think it was in reference to Gandalf. And I don't know where this stream came from, if it was taken down. So it looked like Erica had rebroadcast the stream where Gandalf, kind of spurgs out and starts making weird noises. And it's called Cult Prestige and the Deadly Sin of Wrath. So Erica had rebroadcast that on her stream. And I hadn't seen that, but I guess like Gandalf and the Southern Belle or whatever woman get into an argument, and just becomes kind of like childish name calling, and Gandalf starts kind of like cursing her and making like howling remarks, and so it's unclear. Like, we were analyzing what would cause Gandalf to act like that, the danger of e-personality, and Claire was basically kind of like, he's just a beta, and you're using like feminine energy to control him, and type aspects. And we could talk about like the alpha beta, and I was joking kind of the beta trade. So I don't know if did you want to play Bad Goy's clip of the beta trade?
Sure, I can prepare that. Claire's joined the stream, so maybe she can talk a little bit about her week in review.
Yes, okay, so I put Bad Goy's thing in the thing if you want to talk about it later, and then we could talk about the beta trade, egalitarianism, saying like Doovid's basically an egalitarian, willing to treat everyone as equal no matter where you come from, what your racial economic background, male or female, but how that plays for a woman, even a feminist or just a random woman who's trying to accumulate power. And presumably you could only accumulate power with male followers, because if you're only a leader among women, you can't really have true power. So if you're a woman looking to advance in society, you need to come across male followers. So how do you do that? Kind of like having like a whole bunch of betas. So it was interesting talk on Claire's channel, but I'll mute myself and thank God we got some more panelists, and hopefully we'll have an interesting conversation. But I do think this beta trade was kind of funny, and the concept of an egalitarian, how does a woman advance? How does a woman accumulate male followers or male respect, male people who are under them, and what kind of relationship does that? How does that unfold? So it should be interesting.
That's I like that you brought that up, because I was just thinking as you were saying that, how does that then incorporate into the rest of what we believe, society, et cetera, government and whatnot, our family, because family, right? If you don't start at the family, where are you starting?
Okay, thanks for coming on, Dr. Renee. If you could just mute, we like to talk to Claire first.
For sure.
Absolutely. She's got to go to bed. It's pretty late there for her. So Claire, could you just tell us about your week so far, what's going on with your channel, and anything of interest that is coming up for you?
Well, as you know, I got another strike, and I don't really know what it's about, except that it was for hate speech, and I didn't think anything we said was in any way hate speech. Doovid was on the stream, so I don't know if he remembers anything that could have been construed as hate speech. It was really, just a light-hearted satire during
Not
which.
to interrupt, Jennifer thought the word retard is a marker for a pejorative term that could be interpreted as hate speech. So just the fact that you had retard in the title was likely what triggered it, but I don't have any knowledge of that.
Yeah, I mean, a few people have suggested it, but I don't think the actual content of what was said was in any way hate speech. And I did have some good news from YouTube, and that there was a video that Jen was on with me, and I can that was removed, I think, in the summer, in June, I think, and it's been reinstated. So I guess it's possible to get justice from YouTube, but so I'm praying it'll be okay.
Yeah, I don't actually remember that video and why it would have been reported. And as far as I understand, they don't actually tell you what exactly it was that got it taken down.
No,
And
they never do.
so it sounds like there is some wiggle room. If you contest the reporting, they might actually reinstate your video, but it seems like it took, how long did it take to get reinstated?
I remember mentioning it to you in June when I was in China, in fact. So yeah, a few months.
Yeah, so you might have to wait a few months, but if your video is, if you think that the strike was erroneous, maybe you can contest it and maybe you can get the video reinstated. So if people are interested in doing that, might be a viable path. So unfortunately, Claire has some strikes on her channel. There was the unfortunate porn incident a little while back, and now this other one. So Claire's got a backup channel, I think. I don't know if you want to share that one with the audience.
Yes, it's called Hardcore Prawn. So that should be easy to remember. And the prawn will be the shell of the shellfish variety. I can't upload anything at the moment, but the viewing figures haven't been too bad. So and I'm able to express myself, so it doesn't feel too bad. And I suppose at some stage people are going to take down my channel, and I suppose I have to be philosophical about it, and yeah, I'll just have to hope for the best.
Yeah, there's been a
So I
lot.
don't think I said anything terrible.
Well, it's subjective to a certain degree, right? Like I think I heard recently, I can't remember who was covering this, but I watched a stream where they were talking about how the AI on Twitter was picking up terms that were problematic more frequently with African Americans, and they, there was some question as to whether some words were okay to use by some people but not by others, and sort of showing the limitations of this AI technology and its inability to discern context. So we discuss a lot of contentious issues on these channels, but I think we do it in a sober way, or we at least attempt to. So I do think if we can keep it kind of professional without descending into, hatred or anything like that, I do think we'll be okay. There were some threats made against my channel by everyone's favorite pseudo-intellectual quack, ConOps, and that was restreamed on my channel. So the evidence is all there in case anyone wants to go back and look at it. I really don't think people should be threatening to take each other's channels down. I think we should.
No, it's undignified, and I really hope it will stop and not accelerate. And in any case, he has withdrawn his threat, hasn't he? And
Right.
he did, didn't he? Didn't he? Yeah. So I hope we can, draw a line under it. He did it pretty promptly.
Right. I still think, people should understand that free speech, first of all, free speech doesn't really exist on YouTube. There's tons of things you can't do on YouTube. And if someone wants to run their channel whatever way they want, that's really their own choice. So the way I see it is free speech on YouTube is your ability to have your own channel and talk about whatever you want within the confines of the YouTube policy. It's not freedom to access whoever you want and basically harass them in the chat. So kind of have to repeat that. We like to hear your comments in the chat. We just we have to draw the line at harassment and attempts to dox. We don't want to discourage people from coming on the show.
I don't think ConOps has done anything like that. He hasn't.
Okay, let's not talk about ConOps anymore. I'm not going to.
But he hasn't threatened to dox anyone, has he? To be fair.
Well, he's harassing me and making constant insults towards me in the chat and not making any arguments. And I think I made that pretty clear on the show that I appeared on. He doesn't really have an argument against any of the positions I actually want to talk about, which are the ones on my blog. He refuses to read it. So basically,
Jen, I just want to interject quickly, because what you're saying, you're generalizing, but what I heard when I was listening last night is he ad homs you, and like you said, he attacks your persona, which is irrelevant. the stuff he was saying was extremely irrelevant from what I was listening to, Claire, and I think maybe that's the issue.
Well, there's a question maybe as to what's relevant and what's not relevant. And some people think that criticizing someone's internet persona is relevant, and they're free to think that, and they're free to talk about it on their own channel. But I really don't think that's where I want to take this channel. Like, I want to leave people the freedom to sort of be themselves and be free from judgment or, bullying to try to act a certain way. So I try to stay off the ad hom stuff. If he wants to start a channel and start talking about me all the time like Claire does, that's his choice. But it's not incumbent on me to host this type of nonsense. I don't really think those conversations go anywhere, frankly.
He was extremely inappropriate asking Cult Bear about things. I was actually shocked that he went to the places that he went to, and then he would try to bring it back to a civilized discussion in a way, but mostly he was just uncivilized.
Well, yeah. So Claire, if we look at your channel, you claim to be all about free speech, but we can sort of see that when you allow quote free speech with no restrictions, it seems to always degenerate into a dick measuring contest, which I think was very obvious with, who was it? Cade and Ovi and Blunder Try basically ganging up on Cade. And I think that video actually got taken down. But from what I heard,
because it was apparently too long. It was just a weird reason, but that was what they said. It wasn't for hate speech or anything, but they actually said it was too long. But that was after the strike on the retard video.
So do you think that those kind of conversations are valuable?
For me, it's interesting to observe how males interact with each other. So I guess they were shit testing him and interrogating him about his morals and where he came from, and it was ostensibly about IQ and where they went to university. But I suppose, at this sort of psychological level of how men interact with each other, which is so different from how women interact with each other, I thought it was worthwhile and interesting, even though at the time I didn't think the conversation itself was particularly interesting. And then I realized what it was all about.
Yeah, the first probably a little bit until they got to a certain point, I think was very interesting, only in exposing how they treat people. That was a shit show.
Yeah, it's men seem to almost well, it seems almost standard to threaten each other with violence and do all the things that are of course forbidden on social media, but that seems to be their sort of normal interaction with each other.
What do you guys think about when that conversation devolves into your IQ, my IQ, which is really irrelevant? It's
still relevant to them, I guess, as a dick measuring exercise. I mean, I guess at some level they're trying to establish pecking order and bonding and all the psychological stuff, and which I guess we women do in a different way.
What's the point of the week in review is to push progress forward and see, like, why are we talking to people? What's the purpose of talking with people? What are we getting out of it?
Doovid, what's your opinion on that sort of interaction between men?
Well, usually I just avoid it because I'm a purpose-driven person, and I'm happy with silence unless there's a purpose to communication. So, the stream I was on with Claire that got taken down, I tried to turn it into meta-analysis and of like the nature of what beta is, or how does a woman acquire power? How does a woman get males that support her rise to the accumulation of power, however you want to phrase it, and specifically Church of Entropy or the archetypes, and also just like, what are we trying to accomplish? Did the interaction serve a purpose, or was it negative towards the purpose? And so coming together and examining these things, and it could deal with personalities and saying, okay, I just can't work together with that person, it's negative energy. It seems to be drawing both of us down to positive interactions, and we'd rather be celebrating victories than sharing warnings.
And I'm just curious about what are your thoughts about men that do that and kind of distract from the subject instead of arguing the subject? It gets into that sort of, well, what's your IQ and where'd you go to school and grilling each other. That can be relevant. I
It could be
understand.
just plain ethos. Yeah, I mean, if it's just qualifications, and sometimes there's like a hazing process or a pathos of toughening each other up, or the entertainment value. Like last week, Jennifer was saying this kind of like infotainment, and I was saying I don't want to be categorized with entertainment because just the connection with entertaining says it doesn't have to serve a value. You don't have to be pushing forward some sort of ideas or accomplish something. It was simply entertaining. So I think in a lot of these spheres, the entertainment is the key thing. And there's also kind of like a rehearsal type thing where people appear on other streams, practice their lines, and have these like pre-rehearsed uh, exchanges, or they had an exchange that was like well received, so they just keep on repeating it again and again due to some what I would just say is completely false. Like things like honor and pride or acclaim, being well liked or popular, that you might have utility but are generally worthless things. So I would avoid those things basically in totality. And when streams deteriorate into that, usually I try to sign off. If I can't control it, certainly in my streams, I would probably do everything possible to prevent it from deteriorating like that. Or if I couldn't, probably shut it down. Week in review, we stay pretty purposeful driven. However, there is utility to probably the majority of people to just entertainment, and Claire might have that internal battle where she's just like, am I going to give people what they want, as opposed to being pushing down and saying we are going to drive forward ideas, we are going to have order of decorum, or she just say like, well, 40 people are watching now and they seem to be having a good time, so whatever.
I'm interested too, because Claire, I know you have to go. It's late where you're at. So
Okay,
what did you feel about when that interaction happened? Like, how do you feel that's a productive interaction? And not that I want to like put it on you. Do you approve of that? Is that your ideal? I guess what I want to say is that your ideal interaction between men? When
well,
I
it's
guess,
nothing to do with me, really, in a sense of how they choose to interact with each other.
well, if
If
they're
that
on your channel, I mean, because you do have some
I didn't
control.
mind. Well, I'm pleased that they, felt able to do that on my channel. I feel like a provider of hospitality, and if they feel comfortable doing that, then that's fine. I mean, I'm inclined to, let things run and see, where it
But in
leads to.
regards to your patriarchy beliefs, do you think that's what is part of the patriarchy?
Well, patriarchy seems to be used as a word for male misbehavior. I use it in a very specific way, which is to say that a patriarchy is is a society that prioritizes the preferences of married fathers. And so, I don't wish to associate it with, domestic violence and
No. I'm just
criminality, which seems to be how you use it.
no. I don't mean to use it in that way. Please let me clarify. I'm just saying if we're going to focus on the patriarchy, or if that's something that you believe in my opinion, I would think that men should be upholding a certain standard. Because they are the patriarchy, and that's the whole point of having the patriarchy, is to have them uphold a certain standard, and
Well, I
some of these
wasn't.
guys are not upholding that. That's all.
Well, I wasn't imposing any sort of standard. They were just sort of free to talk to each other as they wished. There were no particular standards. I was just happy to let things roll.
But do you,
I mean,
so then you
other
think
people might be, policing the
those
tone, but
words,
that's not my style.
well, then do you think that those behaviors, as far as men are concerned, are really ideal for a patriarch?
Well, I think that's how they do it. That's how they'll always do it. So it's not up to me to sort of step in and say, "Ooh, you must be nicer to Cade," and you're being a bit mean. And
No, but some of their stuff got a little wacky. That's all I'm saying is kind of they again, like you said, they went into a measuring contest instead of having a male conversation.
well,
And
it's not up to me to police it. And as far as I can remember, they had an okay time and got on, and nothing terrible was said. And I was saying that this is how I think men generally interact with each other when they are first, are trying to get to know each other and see if the other is okay. And it was a shit test on Cade.
I guess maybe I'm wrong. I might be wrong. I just had higher expectations for
For
men.
me, oh,
No, not for you, but for men in general. And then with your beliefs about the patriarchy, which I believe in patriarchy to a degree, maybe not secular Quranism, but the reason we believe in patriarchy is because they're supposed to uphold a certain standard because they have to hold that standard to be the patriarch. If they're acting like women and they're bickering and fighting about stupid shit, then they're sort of failing the patriarchy, in my opinion.
right. I didn't think anything much of it. I mean, I think, if they want to do their locker room talk, that's fine. I mean, nobody looks at our videos anyway. Not really, not enough people. So, it's no big deal. It's,
Yeah,
in a way, it's quite private.
Bring it back to something quasi-sensical and keep it on track for week in review. I think it's pretty standard for when people meet each other, when men meet each other, there's some type of basically, the way it is with dogs, where they kind of sniff each other and then they like growl at each other to determine who's the alpha. It's kind of like
Yeah.
that with men as well. And so it's just a question of how exactly are they asserting dominance. And
Well, do you think they do it in that way, Jen? Or should they do it in a different way?
Dr. Renee, the point of the week in review is for one person to talk at a time. I wanted to get through Claire first, have her go off, and then have you talk exclusively. It's not a conversation stream, it's a week in review stream. So if I could just finish real quick. So I think our job as women is to kind of facilitate these discussions of dominance to determine, to basically keep them on track to make sure that when they're determining who's the alpha, that it's done in a more sort of honorable way, right? So to keep it on ideas and not.
Are you talking about men or who's the alpha? I'm sorry, just clarify.
Well, it sort of.
Are you talking about men or women?
It's more in the context of men. Women determine alpha based on a bit different standards. I think women are not so much about sniffing each other and then growling and then determining who's the alpha. Women are more about community and is this woman my friend? And is she in the same sort of group as me, or is she part of another group and she's sort of an opponent? I don't really think women are trying to one up each other. I've never heard of two women yelling at each other about whose IQ is higher or which school they went to, right?
But they compete in a more subtle way, such as I don't know how many children they have or what their man does for them, that kind of thing.
Or their status, job wise. There's tons of things we judge each other against. Sure. Yeah. I was asking. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just wondering because when we were talking about it, I was like, how is this? Because I just didn't see it as normal. That's all. I thought it could be more civilized and more concentrated to facts. And I think you can find someone else out by more facts than really how they were handling it. That's all.
Well, about feminism or saying you're just the concept of egalitarianism. If you want to push progress forward in streaming, and you're not likely you're going to have a larger male audience, or if you're facilitating conversations largely between men or men and women, and just saying we're going to have an egalitarian stream here where there's basically the same rules for men or women regardless of the natural proclivities that men and women may have for interacting. And it should seem relatively reasonable. So unless you need maybe you have to work out some sort of how do you have egalitarian streams, what is a reasonable discourse, And how does a woman build up a platform, especially when it comes to the point where a woman is moderating discussions between multiple men? So if you say, does the girl kind of become like one of the guys and say like it becomes guy talk, or is saying it's of a nature where because it's an egalitarian stream that includes men and women, it doesn't revert into identity in that way. That
How do you think I do it then? I mean, what do you think my style is, Doovid?
you're kind of like Babs style, where you kind of let your guests take over the show.
I think that's how they prefer it.
It's even lower than Babs Cast. It's on OV tier now.
Well, Babs is the lowest tier because he would just kind of like leave. Even he wouldn't even be there. He would just start the stream and not even be there to do anything. But Claire is usually there. But yeah, we'll just kind of fade into the background and kind of so it's like you're hosting a male. We even joked on the stream whether Claire is in essence a feminist or you're a reluctant feminist. But if the nature is saying like, no, we're gonna have a controlled conversation. We're trying to push progress forward. There has to be goal orientation. There has to be some sort of decorum. And the host, whether it's a male or female, has to be able to maintain that decorum. And you as the host don't really do that. So, your streams will revert to the larger personality. So Brundle is on your stream, or kind of like your alpha competition, where it's like, oh, okay, Claire is passive, so who could take over the stream. And to some extent it's based on qualification, because that's we talked about in your stream, where in the animal world alpha is largely based on violence or physical prowess, who could accomplish the most physically, either in terms of the fear factor of if things reverted to violence, or maybe labor, harvesting of resources. However, in the greater social economic world, where violence is basically a non-issue, you have police and rules and saying we don't expect any violence, and if there is violence, that's a matter for the police to settle. Where social economic position, things like money or education or the gift of gab, certain skill sets will overrank, and you have like in university setting or intellectual setting, or possibly money is always a trump that you could throw a wrench into the classical who's an alpha and who's a beta, and is it relative that there's no such thing as a universal alpha. In some situations a beta will be an alpha, and Claire's kind of definition, alpha is a leader among men. And so can a woman turn into an alpha? Is there such a thing as a woman who becomes the leader among men?
What do you think, Claire? Do you think it's possible for a woman to lead men?
It's not an ideal situation, and I suppose if a woman who does want to do that would have to do it quite subtly.
Yeah, in my experience, I don't know if it's most men or a lot of them, but it's probably at least 50% just aren't comfortable following a woman. And I'm basically fine with that, because the men that are comfortable following me, they'll be the alphas to the other men. So whether the men who are the sort of lower tier are following me, or someone who's a representative of my ideas, I don't really care. But I think there is some truth to this idea that if a woman's going to exert influence, it's going to be in an indirect way. But I still think that there is such a thing as an alpha female. It's just a sort of different type of alpha. And I think ideally, and this is kind of coming back to what Renee said, is that ideally it should be on the basis of ideas, right? We want it to be the person, like that's the strength of the internet, is not to be like, I'm going to beat you up, man, but rather to be like, well, here's my idea. It dominates your idea, and therefore I'm the alpha until someone else comes along and maybe displaces my idea, type of thing. So I would like to see us all working towards that as an ideal. And I think if we don't impose some kind of order on the streams, it's going to be tough. So just looking at this, exchange that happened with Cade, Blundertry, and OV, aka Obvious Virgin, I think it sort of shows that these people are like Blundertry and OV are betas, and they can't dominate in the domain of ideas. So they're sort of forced to these more beta strategies of like, ha ha, you're a loser, ha ha, and kind of trying to. I find it very annoying when OV talks over people. Honestly, I find that really tedious, and he does it a lot, like cuts people off.
Yeah, I did have a kind of shouting match with him, and of course, when you start shouting, you kind of, get, I don't know, it changes your mood, but I think with I mean, I know Doovid made this joke about trading in betas, and I don't really think of it as that. I mean, I try, to adopt a collegiate atmosphere. I mean, often maybe I break down and start asserting myself, but I think on the whole, I try to go forward in a comradely way, or that's what I like to think I'm doing.
Well, at some point you have to make a choice. At some point you have to make a choice. Are you going to let it degenerate into what it turned into, or are you going to impose order? And you can't really have it both ways, because this supreme alpha is not going to come around to a stream that they perceive as being dominated by betas. Like, I don't want to talk to Blundertry. I don't want to talk to OV, not because I'm scared of their ideas, but because I've talked to them enough times to know that it's essentially a waste of my time. They're not going to be convinced by my superior arguments, and all they're doing is looking for an opportunity to shout me down and insult me and get material that they can then sort of stream about and make fun of me. Like that, why would I want to be involved in that?
Well, and just some prerequisites of things, like in generally, alpha refers to physical prowess, which is not a factor in the e-world. And generally, like the cool people don't do computers; they don't need computers. Maybe technology has changed where you can't really be cool without being computer savvy, and you can't even really have like a geeky friend that does your computer stuff for you, because the nature of iPhones and all this various stuff, where you really have to be able to go solo and use the technology on your own. So what makes an alpha in the e-sphere is different than what would make the alpha in the real world, because violence is not really a factor in the e-personality. So you have like the teasing matches or the talking over, and then you have the you influence like super chats or something, like throwing money around, having like the gatekeeper role, where like, okay, I'm an alpha because it pays for you to fall in line under my leadership because I have more subscribers than you. I could book you on bigger shows. So fall in line, follow this natural hierarchy because it'll be in your benefit, versus just this kind of e-personality. I'm gonna do a got you, and so to say, I'm gonna win because it's like a teasing match and more people are gonna laugh, or on be my side, like I won, I had the best gotcha. And so you have like your blunders, OV, probably even like Luke Ford, your irony brothers. They're largely like shock jocks, that's their way to become an alpha, where they're just the best shock jock. And so this E level will completely throw it off. And then the level of a woman, if you're the gatekeeper, you have the platform, you have the ability to advance someone's streaming career or advance their ideas, or maybe you're the most well-read, smartest person, whatever reason why there would be some natural order of deference. And so a woman in the real world, you would have the sexual tension that the incel that can't, they're a beta because they can't find a woman, they can't find a girlfriend, so they take a subservient role to a woman, and that woman doesn't even, God forbid, provide them forbidden sexual relations, but just to have female attention is enough that they take that subservient role. And that's kind of your beta orbiter that will become somewhat of a subversive to a woman, but is really built around the sexual tension that the beta in essence wants to be an alpha. They're only taking the subservient role to the woman because they're scared, or they don't have the ability to move into being an alpha in a sexual sense. as opposed to an egalitarian. So, oh, I'm going to treat you like an equal. I'm going to look at you for your basis. I don't care whether you're male, female, white, black, Hindu, Christian, Muslim, or whatever. I'm going to look at what you bring to the table and judge you on an equal basis based on what the goal of the interaction is.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm, I don't think any of the men who come to my channels are sort of betas. I mean, the political activists. I mean, that's the most distinguishing thing about them, and I think men who are interested in politics only would want to have anything to do with me, or have some interest in the views that I express. But it wouldn't be, just because they think I'm very sexy, because I'm I know I don't provide that.
Well, I think there's a bit of an issue here with assuming that everybody who's talking to a woman on the internet is doing so because they want to have some sexual benefit from her.
Well, it depends on how they talk to you.
Well, I don't really think that's the case.
Well, that's why I was differentiating between the E alpha beta and the in real life alpha beta, because in real life, the male alpha is generally based on violence or physical prowess, and the E personality, intrinsically cannot be based on violence. And in real life, in theory, you say the male female alpha beta relationship is generally built upon sexual tension, and in E culture, there's almost no chance to very little chance that there's ever going to be any sexual relation or something like that. So the alpha beta relationship has a completely different dynamic over the internet, but it still could be the same type thing where it's like, I wish I had a girlfriend. I'm, I don't really see any chance of me finding a girlfriend. So this person who's never going to be my wife, but is some sort of female friend, let me be subservient to her, because that will make it more likely that I'll find some other woman or some sort of personality that you could have an E-level demonstration, like, look how good I am with women by, these streams and how nicely I talk with them, that you would have a, watered down alpha beta relationship, just like males could have a watered down alpha beta relationship over the internet.
Or they can just sort of say her name as I was talking to, whoever, and it's a female name. Yeah. So
or just to build their E persona, their career, so to say, as a gatekeeper. So say the alpha who say, okay, like, I'm an alpha, I have, a girlfriend. There's multiple other girlfriends. Should I not have a girlfriend? That could be my girlfriend. And you could be a provider to males who don't have a girlfriend. He's, okay, this guy's an alpha and he's got more girls that want him than he knows what to do with. So you become friends with the alpha, and maybe the beta will you get like a hand-me-down trickle female attention or something like that. And that could also be for a money power position, or protection in terms of like the animal world, the protection against physical threats, or just natural resources, that the alpha accumulates more for himself than he needs. That's why he's a leader among men, because he has much more possessions than he needs for himself, and therefore he could provide not only for himself, but a huge crowd of other people. And the gatekeeper type role that might be in the streaming world, where say, I want subscribers, I want to be talking to bigger people, I want to do things that make me look good, that make me look attractive towards people watching my show, super chatting, towards established guests wanting to be my guest, towards people with big platforms wanting to have me on the show. And there could be dynamics like women, a lot of the big streamers like No Apologies, JF, Luke Ford, like, kind of fancy themselves on being ladies' men. It's part of their personality, is saying like, okay, I might be a computer geek in streaming, but in real life, I'm an alpha. Like, I don't have a problem with women.
is Luke still celibate officially, or has that come and gone?
Well, I mean, yeah, because he's kind of aged, but it's saying he's constantly telling stories, or even Brundle is now is married. So even if he's personally, and we asked that I asked Elliot that, does age turn an alpha into a beta? So like Luke Ford, who maybe a decade ago was like an alpha, and now he's kind of like a beta because he's a has-been. And at a certain point, a player becomes a dirty old man.
Yeah. Mm. Mm.
Or to some perspective from the saying like, I never thought being a player was cool. I reject the alpha terminology in the first place. But I mean, there's many different ways of understanding that. And then for the woman, does it pay to, how do you recruit followers, even if some of your followers, let's say, have nefarious intentions in becoming your followers, or the follower is just your follower because they need to be taught how to interact with a woman. So to say, an incel that doesn't have experience interacting with females, and they're saying, okay, I know you're not going to be the woman, but I need help in practice interacting with women. Will you provide that role to me? As opposed to someone who's saying like, I really like your ideas, and I'm becoming your follower or your fan, just like I would of another male, because you're facilitating my ability to have a better life, to get ahead in life, to understand things that I wish I understood, to make connections or networking, and from an egalitarian basis where I needed someone who could facilitate me having a better life. And I looked around, and it turns out that I became a follower of a woman as opposed to a follower of a man, and it was irrelevant to any relational, reproductive, sexual things.
But it's never really egalitarian, though, is it? I mean, even if it's just sort of two people, it's very rarely egalitarian. There's always a kind of.
Do you have study part when you were in law school or something like that, or you're in science class, you need a lab partner, and it's like, okay, like, oh, are you single? You're not married. How come you're single? Like, I forget the English book, that opens up every man of means is in.
But you don't, or something of that nature. Or I have
Well,
a
the
nice.
English book that starts out, any man of means is looking for a woman or something like that. But you say like, no, I just want a lab partner and to understand these topics, or I just want a business partner. I just want a network, and I'm not looking, okay, because I'm single, someone should help me out, so I shouldn't be single anymore, or dating relational advice. And whoever my lab partner, whoever my business partner, networking partner, that was completely irrelevant to other factors in my life.
So I guess we can wrap up. Claire, if you have any final words, we'll say goodbye for now, and we'll talk to Renee for a little bit. I'd like to go into what she's been doing on her channel. So over to you, Claire.
Okay. Nothing in particular. Just I'd like to try new styles and new ideas on potential people who might be interested, and they're still being formulated. And I hope to have something more for you when it all happens. So thank you very much for having me on, and I'll go off now.
Great. So we'll follow your channel and look forward to what happens. So hopefully you'll get your main channel back soon and be streaming on that. Do you know how long the strike lasts for, or
It's the usual 90 days.
So you can't stream for 90 days.
But I can on the other channel, so I guess that's okay. But I can't even upload anything at the moment.
All right, so we'll follow you on the other backup channel. It's in the chat if people want to subscribe to that. And Claire streams pretty regularly, so if anyone's interested, she's usually pretty open to get people on to discuss whatever it is they're interested in. So thanks for coming on, Claire, and we'll go over to Dr. Renee next. I subscribe to your channel, Dr. Renee. Thanks so much for putting out content. It's a real shame about the Hangouts YouTube interface going away. Did you use that before the transition happened, Dr. Renee, or did you always use what you use right now?
No, I started with Hangouts, and when Hangouts went away, I went to StreamYard, which is a pain in the butt. So I'm trying to learn OBS at the moment, but I got a strike as well. So I have a live channel that I put on my channel so that people can come join me, and I'm going to learn OBS and hopefully figure this out.
Yeah, that's too bad about the strike. Sorry to hear it. I was tuned into one of your shows where you took the trouble to make a game, and I thought that was hilarious and really entertaining. So why don't you tell the audience what that was all about?
Well, no, I did YouTube Jeopardy just because we found that when you're dealing with a lot of the hate in the chat, best way to deal with it's a little bit of humor. And we did YouTube Jeopardy. And we, and I think you can do it for anything. We were guessing YouTubers, but you could do, any YouTuber. I know there's much bigger channels that we could kind of pick on a little bit. So I hopefully will be able to expand that in my next live streams.
Yeah, I thought it was really funny, and it just sort of goes to show how a little bit of preparation and creativity can go a long way. Because if you just start up a stream with no direction, it just kind of tends to descend into anarchy pretty quickly, which is probably less desirable, especially if you're looking to recruit new people, because it just seems to have this tendency to go back into personal drama, which I think is a bit intimidating for newcomers. So there have been a few Renee haters in the chat, and I've said, keep your personal problems off the stream. Like, I'll make my own decisions about people. So far, I've had no problems with you. You've always been respectful towards me. And a bunch of anonymous trolls saying that they hate someone in the chat. Well, I'll tell you guys, that's actually going to make me like them more, because I get the same treatment. And
You feel my pain.
it's part of your persona, right? Like, having a gaggle of haters in a way increases your cult prestige, because if people are talking about you, even if it's in a negative way, it sort of generates interest vis-a-vis the what they call the Streisand effect. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
A while ago. I'm not currently familiar. I don't recall exactly what it means, but I've heard of it before. Can you recap so everybody knows?
Well, it's this really funny story. I've got the Wikipedia entry for it. So, Streisand effect is a phenomenon whereby an attempt to hide, remove, or censor a piece of information has the unintended consequences of publicizing the information more widely, usually facilitated by the internet. And it's named after the American entertainer Barbra Streisand, whose 2003 attempt to suppress photographs of her residence in Malibu, California, inadvertently drew further public attention to it. So I'll share that in the chat. And, it's kind of funny how the haters sort of lead to you getting more popular. It's just one of those funny internet quirks where you can't really control what people think, can you?
You can't. And I really appreciate you. I listened to your ConOp stream last night. That was enlightening. And I do like appreciate Claire, but her answers to your questions, I don't know the background. My only question was, I don't know why she had to defend you. However, if, like you said, she's all about free speech and being truthful, she did not do the right things if that's what she believes. And ConOps, the places that guy went, I don't even know him. I've only heard of him in the chats, but the places that he went with that was unbelievable. I could not believe the things he was saying to other people, to you. It reminded me very scarily of my own experiences. And he says he's not upset. He's very obsessed. That's clear. And that interferes with our ability to transfer information. That's the biggest part that bothers me, is how can we transfer information when he tried to come at you with some information, and some back and forth, but then he immediately devolved to attacks on your person. And what does it matter who Cult Bear is with? And that is irrelevant. He couldn't attack your ideas anymore. And that, to me, and I'm not one of the most common people on YouTube, but to me, I can see that discredited him hugely. A lot of people go for that. They go for the drama. They go for the personal attacks, and they just go, yeah, they're cheerleaders for it. when I saw what they did, and you just kept saying, okay, well, argue this and argue this and argue this. You kept giving him options, like ways in to attack your ideas, and he couldn't. He just kept saying the most and foul things. And that's why I was interested in asking Doovid, like, well, and Claire, well, if we want the patriarchy, don't we have a high standard or some sort of mediocre standard for men to uphold if we're going to respect the patriarchy?
Well, that's the point of the week in review, is to make sure that we're pushing progress forward in understanding ideas and even personalities. Okay, this is the certain ideas in schools of thought that different people are representing, and here's various topics that require further thought in the current state of knowledge and research that the people on these streams have about these issues, and to have some sort of gauging process of trying to move forward, so we're just not stuck in the same rut of circular conversations.
If Claire wants to run her stream where she doesn't intervene and she just wants to let it go, wherever it goes, that's her choice. I don't think, it's up to everybody how they want to run their channel, but you have to realize in the long run, is it productive? Is that what you want to do? And if that becomes what your stream is it really going to get you viewers? If that's what you're trying to get out, is your perspective, your ideology, your beliefs, is that helpful to your goal? No, because people are going to get sick of that, right?
I think
people to clearly express what their goal is, and that other people, it should be relatively transparent. Like, what are you streaming for? What are you trying to accomplish? And are your certain relations and associations beneficial towards the accomplishment of goals?
Yeah, Claire's in the chat right now saying, well, I don't see how letting men talk to each other has anything to do with patriarchy, but that's because Claire's definition of patriarchy is very limited. It's just all that Claire means when she says patriarchy is a society that preferences the breeding patterns of married fathers. Whereas when I think of patriarchy, I think of a society that's governed by male values. And then we have to ask ourselves the question, well, what are male values? And taking into consideration the fact that when men meet each other, they're going to size each other up and have some type of pissing contest, and basically making the choice that we want to sort of make this a higher quality pissing contest. So that's where the ideas come in, show us
why I asked Doovid, because Doovid doesn't seem to need to have those pissing contests. So my point being is, there are some men who have to have pissing contests, and there are some men who do not. And that is my ideal of patriarchy.
Well, possibly you could prove yourself historically through accomplishment, that you might need historical pissing contest, or however you want to call conflict, that you have to prove yourself through conflict. But once the conflict is over, you may not constantly need to re-examine it until a situation comes, or through your resume, so to say, that the reason why we're listening to this person or having this person on the stream is because they bring these positive factors to the table, have these characteristics, this amount of research, or different factors. And that's more objective. Like, pissing contests are usually unobjective, and they're largely a waste of time.
And I feel like you might have a little pissing contest, but I would expect it to be an intellectual pissing contest. You might go off,
each other out, so to say. You need to feel each other out. So,
what's your knowledge? Where's your background? Like, prove to me that you have a right to be speaking on this subject.
Debate. I mean, that's why I opened up with the story about the Hindus and the role of debate, and saying who has a better view of the world, who has a more inclusive view. And so, sometimes there's time for telling narratives, telling stories, giving over information, because a lot of things are educational and repetitive. And just to say, what role should different people play? And so in the wild, so to say, that's done through violence. In the animal kingdom, and even on the playground, the sniffing people out is largely a question of violence and determining who's the strongest. But the price of being the alpha is that you have to do the defending. So, okay, you prove the alpha and you might have the alpha status in the group, but should it come that your group is attacked by another person, the alpha is going to be the one expected to stand up and have the fight. And that's also in these circles of debate. So if we have various topics that we talk about all the time, and it's through these constant hours of streaming, it's been determined that certain people know a lot more about these topics than other people, and then you have newcomers come, and you might constantly have that feeling each other out. But you also have the advantage of these things being recorded, so you could listen to recordings of these talks. So it's like, oh, here's a new character, Dr. Renee. So does Doovid and Dr. Renee have to test each other, or is it a matter of homework where say, okay, I have a channel and you have a channel, and rather than, is it time now, okay, we need to stop everything that we're doing and exchange information to kind of get a feel for where we're coming from, what we bring to the table? Or is it kind of like, do your homework, like saying, like, you go to my channel and watch tens of hours of my content?
Yeah, exactly. You have a great point. Is we can ask each other questions. So when does the pissing contest become necessary? Because you and I don't need to have a pissing contest. I haven't ever had a pissing contest with Jen. I've always been very interested in what she has to say. I looked up her website because she said, don't talk to me unless you've looked at my website and you have some valid questions, like stop being an idiot. So I said, well, shit, next time I come on, I need to have read some of her information. So why is that different between two men, quote unquote, versus you and I, Doovid, or Jen and I, or you and Jen?
It's probably insecurity because, I mean, pissing from the animalistic, JF evolutionary function is a somewhat of way of marking territory. So saying, okay, like, do I really need to mark territory on someone else's channel and say, okay, I have a.
Is that like primal?
Well, I think that, like dogs or cats or whatever. I mean, I'm not the animal biology expert, but I'm pretty sure that people will piss in order to mark territory. And so when people come into other channels and they might go repetitive and get in their teasing matches, they're kind of marking territory. There's like, oh, I know Doovid. So like, oh, now all of a sudden they're on this stream, or whoever they know, and they want to mark territory and say, first a person when they come into a new place is usually has some level of reservation. They have to go through a learning acclimation process of how is the interaction, how do things work in this new space, and then they might start to mark territory. I'm starting to feel comfortable here. I'm starting to even take over where not only from a Luke Fordian or Brundlefly perspective, like there should be a deference. Like, I have a bigger channel, I have more subscribers than you, I have a bigger Rolodex or network. So even though I'm on your channel, you should give me deference in your own territory. And generally that's not my demeanor. So if there's a purpose, okay, I was invited here for a reason or something. Okay, it's Week in Review with Doovid, which is somewhat of a marking of my territory. I didn't need to piss in order to mark that territory and say, I'm not going to be in a place where I don't belong. Like, I don't need to go onto your stream and mark my territory. If I wanted to have a stream, I could just start streaming on my own channel. So the fact that I'm on Jennifer's channel or a different channel, I'm likely or almost guaranteed to subscribe to the rules of the various person's territory. This is Jennifer's channel, and I'm happy to subscribe to how she wants her channel conducted. And I think that
having a pissing contest over subscribers and channel numbers, and then MSNBC, CNN, they have huge subscribers. Does that mean they're relevant? Does that mean they're right? No. So that means nothing. And quite frankly, it's a lot of the smaller channels that have more relevance and more honesty. So that's what I mean when people get all bent out of shape about subscribers and things like that, and viewers. That doesn't matter to me. What matters is the content you're putting out when you're speaking and what you're saying. And are you, perpetuating the truth and honest discussions to make people think? Because that's, I thought, why we were all here.
Well, I mean, if you want to go back on a philosophical level, and say, well, obviously different people have different reasons for being here. And Doovid's a low conflict person. I'm capable of dealing with high conflict situations, but generally I always prefer, if possible, to de-escalate conflict or even walk away from it and have purposeful interactions. And if there might be people, conflict is an opportunity for them to prove themselves and say, okay, my time is limited. I'm here to accomplish something, not to prove myself. In order to accomplish something, I might have to prove myself in saying, okay, why are we listening to Doovid? Why are we talking to Doovid? Why is he on the stream? So it's like, okay, here's Doovid's resume or something like that, or here's Doovid's past conflict, and you say, oh, you didn't see Doovid on all these other major streams and these debates, that he's already proven himself in conflict. And so you might have the person like, I don't care how many times that guy's proven himself in conflict, I need him to demonstrate the proof of his worthiness in conflict right now. And a lot of people have that so it's constantly blood sports. You constantly are on the battlefield, and you constantly never have any rest or a chance to, because people are just waiting for a got you, or they're looking to whatever reason to say, like, okay, you may have how the mighty have fallen. It's like, okay, you may have proven yourself through conflict in the past, but all I need is one good got you, and that could wipe out all of the past proof of conflict. And so that's why I just try to avoid conflict in general, though there is a science of conflict, and certainly conflict resolution is an important part of human interaction.
Yeah, just to bring it back to this theme that we were discussing, like, I would say that when people are aggressive right off the bat and they're trying to do these like blunder try tier pissing contests, that is in and of itself a beta type behavior. The alpha is not, like, you think of an alpha as being kind of like the lead lion of a pack, right? He's not obsessed with expressing his dominance at all times. He brings it out when he absolutely needs to, but most of the time he's pretty chill and relaxed. That to me is the true alpha, is someone who doesn't feel the need to assert themselves at every at every.
And now do it without trying, right, Jen?
I think it's just a matter of discernment, right? Like, if you the first time you meet someone, do you really need to pin them down and like grab their neck with your?
I think the first time you meet someone, you can tell if they're an alpha or not because of the way they present themselves. An alpha doesn't need, like you said, doesn't need to do all these things to prove himself. He just is.
Yeah, exactly.
The alpha is the one who's going to be called upon should something come up. So, I mean, you think of like the lion pack in the wild, where the lion doesn't need to mess with the betas in their own pack. So the other people might be fighting, and the alpha doesn't constantly need to come in and demonstrate like that they could prove their physical dominance if they had to. But the price of being the alpha is, should something go down, that they're the one who's going to be looked on and called upon. So if it's a social setting, like house, and saying, what happens if someone needs to be bounced out? What happens if a criminal comes in? What happens if there's bad behavior and it needs punishment? And they're going to look to the alpha and be like, well, you got to handle that. So the alpha knows that that's a rare situation, that might only happen once every few weeks or months or even years. But from a historical, saying the last few times that came up, and they have the leisure of avoiding the inter-clan disputes from having a proven track record. So, kind of like the beta who's testing space, it's like the practice zone where you have to practice on your friends. Like, if you're scared of fighting, you don't want to get into a fight with someone who might really want to cause you harm. So you have to practice fighting with people who are not going to cause you harm, like within your pack, within your clan, in order that you could practice. So that's your beta, kind of like Brundle, who's very high conflict in protective circumstances, as where the alphas saying like, if shit goes down, they know it's going to be bad. Therefore they don't play games.
That makes sense, because Brundlefly, again, that's one there aren't many people that I make an opinion based on just hearing them on a stream, but I've seen him be obnoxious multiple times, and it just seems like you said, he goes to the extreme. It's a overcompensating. I don't know what he's doing, but it's very weak because a lot of his arguments are very weak. There's not a lot of strength there. I
It's
don't
the
know.
danger of personality. What happens is a person has some level of success with an inferior form of behavior, but because that inferior form of behavior,
Point. Say that again.
a
Please say.
person has a certain level of success with a inferior, defective form of behavior. You know,
Yes.
so to say that the person went in and achieved their goals with the you basically bad behavior, but because they were able to achieve their goals with second rate or bad behavior, that they come accustomed to doing it again and again, and it becomes trained. And sometimes they don't recognize that, like a Pavlovian conditioning or something like that, that they're acting in a defective behavior because people generally do what works, and if it worked in the past, they're likely to just keep on producing the same result that worked in the past. And once that becomes habituated, it's extremely difficult to change. And even people with these personalities might have minor levels of success where, like, well, there were a few people laughing in the chat, or what does it mean to have a good conversation? And it's like, oh, I got you. Or like they have their troll army, or their people, they're going to be like, ah ha ha, look how much you made a fool of that person. And it's largely negative behavior, like that, to your average logically straight-minded person, you'd be like, what the hell is this guy doing or trying to accomplish? But because they have some sort of positive reinforcement from their fan base, that's enough to keep the behavior going.
And that's why I was getting back to what you were saying about a family a little while back, is because if you don't teach them within the family that negative, so it's like children who behave because they're not getting attention from their parents for good behavior. They're not applauded. They're not taught that that's what's appreciated. If their parents ignore them, they have to behave badly to get attention. And that becomes an adult behavior where they'll do it to other people. So if I can't get attention by being nice, then I'm going to get attention by being negative and attacking people. It's the same thing. It's like, when your kids start, if you ignore them and they're fighting or they cause trouble, and that's the only thing that will get them attention, then that becomes an adult behavior.
Yeah, so in real life, that could come from joining cults, you adopting weird social behavior, because at least it gets them attention. So if they just been like kind of in a non-NPC, but when they adapt some sort of counter cultural behavior, at least they have some sort of recognition and attention, even if it's negative, to the personality, where it's not in real life, and there's much more of a safety network to try out different things, and saying that let me try out this personality, and it may be a negative one, but it worked in the sense that now I have friends. Like before, I was alone, and you're just kind of lonely and depressed. So even though I had to adapt some sort of false personality, at least it broke the loneliness. So the personality, certainly the marginalization, the radicalization process happens constantly like that, where they have a positive reinforcement of, at least I have people to talk to, at least I have people laughing at my jokes, even if they're the butt of their own jokes or whatever. And that's why you need something like a week in review. You need some sort of process where you're evaluating it. And a lot of people, I don't think they have an evaluation process. They don't have a period where, let's examine how this is working out for you. Let's examine what your goals are. Let's examine what you did in the last week and what you want to accomplish for the next week. So unfortunately, most streamers don't go through some sort of review process, and therefore they could, it's just like Brundlefly or any of these personalities. Like, if, okay, you decide to be Dr. Renee, and let's say Renee's your real name, or something. So you're going to have an e-persona of, I think I heard like let's say in real life you're a nurse, so you're kind of building yourself up. So in your e-personality, you're going to be like this advice guru, and you put yourself up a notch in accomplishment from nurse to doctor, and maybe like a fake it till you make it type thing, where you're saying I'm actually qualified to do things that in real life I don't get called to do upon, versus a person who just has a largely negative e-personality where they're it have to be likely psychological problems or a certain social rejection or whatever that caused them to develop whatever e-personality that they've developed.
And I think that when people are honest about their e-personality, that's a problem. I think that some of the people I've met on Gen streams don't pretend to be something they're not. I haven't. Claire was like, "What kind of doctor are you?" I'm like, "I'm not a doctor. I'm clearly, I am a nurse. It's a joke. It's about being a therapist to the YouTube community that has mental problems." So it's largely a joke. I do have a bit of trolley avatars. I've had a couple. I just changed this one but prior to that I was Renee USA. And so, but I'm very open about that I am not a doctor, because and nobody, like Jen said, should be diagnosing anyone on YouTube, because that's clearly against the Hippocratic Oath. So I would never dare to diagnose people, although I'm diagnosed constantly. And I think that matters, being honest about where you are, who you are, and where you come from, so that people can understand. But I mean, you're asking a lot. You're asking a lot, because a lot of people are faking it. They're faking their knowledge. They're faking what they know and their perspective. It's extremely biased. That is my problem. Extremely biased people giving out information, giving out assessments on other people, when their bias is clearly coloring that perspective.
Well, we have to ask ourselves the question, like, why are people on the internet doing this in the first place? So I think I was talking to one of my friends about this the other day, and I said, I think the main reason people get involved in these type of movements is because they want some type of social interaction. And there's essentially nothing wrong with that. But I think there's this other motivation where in their regular day-to-day lives, people are feeling like kind of that they're at the butt end of things in a way. So they're sort of resentful. And so they take on this e-persona that's so different from their IRL persona to kind of blow off steam in a way. And I think that's where the problems start, because they're not actually, they're misrepresenting who they actually are, right? We have no way of telling who Blunder Try really is, because he's anonymous, right? Same with Domingo, same with all these other guys who want to come in and kind of start fights and start trouble. And so I'm always a little suspicious when people are always on the attack against others, but they don't actually give out any information about themselves that anyone can validate, right?
Exactly.
So I think we have this issue with projection, where we kind of assume that other people are in it for the same reasons, and then people can lie and say, well, I'm here because I care about the truth. And it's really easy to pay lip service to these lofty ideals, but at the end of the day, you have to judge people by their behavior. And that comes back to another topic I wanted to quickly touch on, is that establishing the alpha online is not the same as IRL. So I can see someone like Blunder Try easily being an alpha IRL, because he has this aggressiveness and he's very quick to like crush any opposition to his leadership. But online, that doesn't work.
Can I ask you a question? What do you think about someone like that? How do they translate into real life? Those people, do you really think someone who comes online can translate to real life as being an alpha? Because I think they might be an alpha on the keyboard in a stream, but I think they're much weaker in real life.
I've met people like that in real life, and they can easily be the alpha, because when, like, if you come into their circle, they're already the alpha, and even if you have better ideas, they'll figure it out that you're a threat to their dominance, and they'll crush you, and they'll get all their lieutenants to basically shun you. So it's very easy to be the alpha IRL with behavior like that, but it fails online because it just becomes so transparent that he's triggered by what someone else is saying, and he's trying to silence them. Like he went on a months-long defamation campaign against me, where he tried to like get everybody to ban me off their chats, right? And it's sort of laughable because the only people who are going to do that are like the most grug tier betas like Otto Pohl, right? And most people are just going to say, fuck you, I don't care what you say, I'm going to make my own judgment, because people, you have to realize that people get into something like streaming because they already fit a particular profile. Like, you're not going to go into streaming if you can't take criticism, right? Or if you do, you're going to give up in like 10 seconds. You're going to give up as soon as someone says something in the chat that's hurtful, right? You have to have a pretty thick skin. You have to be the kind of person who forms opinions independently. And so this sort of swarming type behavior of like, I guess, lower tier strategies for enforcing dominance don't work online, because the type of people you're dealing with are already selected to be independent thinkers. So that's something.
Don't you think they're slightly weaker, and that's where they assert their dominance is online?
I think there's some of that too. There's some of that too. Like Blundertry obviously has problems with his wife, who's Jewish, allegedly, right? I basically don't believe anything this guy says, but if we are going to believe his story, he's married to a Jewess, and he's like constantly calling me a Jew and trying to get people to hate me on that basis. So that tells me he's mad at his wife. He has some serious issues with his wife, and he's taking it out on me because he doesn't have the stones to deal with his problems in his own marriage. That's what that essentially tells me.
So he's not an alpha then, because if he has to take his problems out on you and not his wife, and deal with them with his wife, that makes him a beta.
Well, he's an alpha wannabe, right? He wants to be seen as some type of thought leader. He wants to have people who do his bidding, and he's basically trying to assert dominance over me. Like, he was constantly ranting about me bending the knee. Oh, you just have to bend the knee. I have more subscribers than you. You have to bend the knee. You have to bend the knee. I'm like, dude, I'm going to bend the knee to someone who has superior ideas and to nothing else, right? And that's why it doesn't really devolve into a pissing contest with Doovid and I, but we occasionally do debates because that's appropriate, right? We both respect each other's domain of knowledge. We have different domains of knowledge. There is some overlap. We tend to focus more on the overlap. And when we don't agree, it turns into more or less a friendly debate. And I really enjoy that. And that is the true alpha behavior, right?
I'm laughing as you say this, because isn't that the point, Jen? That's the point. What you are saying is the point of this, of what we're doing.
Just on one quick point, is it possible a person could be an alpha but yet a beta in certain relationships, where you could have a person that maybe is owned by their wife, even though they might be an alpha in various settings, and it's relative?
I don't think so. I think you are or you're not. Because, and the thing is, like, define an alpha.
Alpha just kind of is a leader among people, and leaders might be followers in some circumstances, and so you could have, like, the guy's captain of the football team, and he controls his domain or runs his business, but his wife wears the pants inside the house or something like that, and you're saying, okay, but does that change the fact that just because his wife owns him, that he's not the alpha when it comes to his business or his team or wherever he is dominant?
Like, he can assert his dominance. And here, I'm not saying a man needs to be alpha in the home, but an alpha, that to me is an unbalanced alpha. An alpha in general is a man who is compassionate and understanding and runs his business right. He's a good boss. He does the right things by his children and his wife. That's a real alpha. I mean, that's why I asked, define an alpha. What is an alpha to us? And that's why I was kind of talking to Claire about patriarchy, because what she was describing as patriarchy, I didn't find that as patriarchy. I'm not looking for a guy who's physically stronger, who asserts his physical dominance over people or his intelligence. A controlling person, that Napoleon complex is not an alpha to me.
Me and Jennifer usually work with the concept of dissonance, where the ideas in our head for how the world works not being in accord with how the world actually works, or dissonance in personality between how a person portrays themselves and how they actually are. And so clearly with a lot of these e-personalities, the dissonance is obvious, that they're portraying themselves to be someone that they're clearly not.
What's an alpha to you, Doovid? And I would like to hear Jen's version of an alpha.
Well, I mean, it's kind of relative, and like, I mean, once you clearly define it, and there's multiple different definitions, But personally, I have kind of a negative view of an alpha as I mean, it's some sort of leadership quality, but generally, Doovid is opposed to leaders and only likes people who step up to leadership when they're called upon, as opposed to kind of like permanent leadership positions or people who self-proclaim to be leaders. So when I use the terminology, I call I'm like a self-proclaimed beta because I have a negative view towards alpha. But we could examine it on different levels or different archetypes, and just switch to the parlance of these debates and dramas, because the alt-right like Vox Day or whatever, Luke Ford, or different spheres that we're in where the terminology of alpha and beta is very popular, as opposed to in a more legitimate scientific conversation, there's probably better terminology, and just talk about leadership qualities, or the rise to power, the will to power.
I take a positive view on the alpha phenomenon because I've always identified as an alpha. So I would say, first and foremost, to be an alpha, you need to be a natural leader. You need to have your own life in order and be essentially successful and wise. And alphaness to me comes down to the ability to get voluntary submission from intellectual elites. So that's essentially how I see myself. I don't have everyone's support for what I'm doing, but for the people who matter, i.e. the intellectual elites, I can persuade them to see things my way. And I don't want to dominate them in any kind of perverted way. I just want us both to respect each other's respective domains of expertise and to kind of lean on each other. So I think an alpha can create that community environment and also rise to the challenge when other alphas of other movements challenge them on whatever their ideas or their persona or what have you. I think being an alpha carries a tremendous responsibility in that sense.
I guess, what about you, Renee? How are you seeing it? How are you defining these terms?
You're muted, Renee. If you wanted to hop on and okay, so Renee's muted. I'm not sure. Maybe she stepped away for a minute. I got a message from Will to Power there who said he wanted to come on. So if you want to hop on there, Will, if you're listening, you're more than welcome to come on and tell us about your week. I see you've got OBS working on your channel, so that's awesome. You've got a response video there to Josh Neal from No Apologies channel, who was talking about individualism. So I'm really glad to see that. That's an interesting subject, individualism. I'm basically doubtful that there even is such a thing as true individualism, because people are always defined relative to their socio-cultural context. So to think that you can really separate yourself from the social context in which you exist is a bit naive. I mean, think about it this way. Can a teacher exist without a student? Is there such a thing as a teacher without a student? I don't really think that there is. It appears that most of these roles, sociologically speaking, require reciprocity to some extent.
Yeah, then how would like the alpha in terms of like the Epsteinian fantasies play in? Where is there alpha to a limit, or does the alpha, in essence, have a leadership position and knows not to go beyond the boundary of necessary leadership to to the value of corruption, like we talked about, like the just king who looks after the orphans and widows and make sure the poor and sick are taken care of, as opposed to the natural tendency of people once they arise to power to engage in Epsteinian fantasies.
It depends relative to what, right? Like Blunder Try can be alpha relative to whatever subset of.
I mean, according to Epsteinian fantasies, like Luke Ford and Blunder, who basically are looking for a venue to fulfill Epsteinian fantasies, as opposed to someone who is like, like, no, I would be helping the sick and the poor and the orphans and the widows. That's the essential element of what alpha does.
I mean, would we consider Bill Clinton an alpha? He would, but
Well,
is he?
Well, he might have both aspects of the protection of the weaker people. The reason you need an alpha is to protect the clan, the tribe, and say that if some dispute comes and people are not capable of standing up for themselves, the alpha is required to protect that. But at the same time, there's like certainly the animal world, you have a dominance factor within that in terms of possibly reproductive success. And the level that so Doovid has a natural dislike of alphas because alphas tend towards Epsteinian fantasies.
Well, explain more. What do you mean that they have a tendency towards that? Explain that.
What the power corrupts, and you're saying once you have followers or the ability to, you're saying if the alpha is the one who has more resources than they need, and could use those excess resources in order to help the people that don't have enough resources to meet their need, or the alpha is strong enough to protect themselves, and then they could use that prowess to protect people that are not strong enough to protect themselves, versus the alpha that recognizes they have power over other people and then tries to amalgamate more and more resources to take more and more advantage, to say the Epsteinian fantasies of raping and pillaging the countryside.
I would say that people indulging in, as you call them, Epsteinian fantasies are, by definition, betas trying to overcompensate, because a true alpha doesn't require anything from anyone else to be an alpha. They just are the alpha. They don't need to be predators of young, innocent women to feel like a big man. And that, to me, kind of seems pretty beta-ish, to be honest.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right with the overcompensation, because an alpha
predator in the sense, okay,
job, right, is to protect the tribe, to protect their family. It's not to take advantage, and that's beta.
Well, you look at the accumulation of excess resources. So once the person,
it's not just about accumulation of resources, it's about what you're doing with those resources, right? Whether you're using them benevolently or not. If you're funding underage hookers, they can hardly be said to be benevolent.
well, and people are complex also. So you mean like Clinton or something, or even Epstein, who possibly did a lot of good, gave JF $25,000, gave millions of dollars, and also did negative things in a complex way where it's, does the bad outweigh the good, or are there separate measures? And if you look at he's dead in terms of reincarnation or heaven and hell, saying, okay, he should be rewarded for the good he did. He should be punished for the negative he did. What does that mean for his next carnation? Certainly, in a just world, he has to be rewarded for the good and at the same time punished for the bad. And, how do you factor in these complex natures? And could you have a pure positive alpha?
Excuse me, what are you doing here? Excuse me, are you here to just ruin the stream now? Is that your plan?
100.000 kleinen Bierlein.
Are you done?
werden schrammt.
Are you done with your little beta?
Is that Yiddish or German? Sounds like he's singing in Yiddish, but maybe it's German.
Ist voraus Süßigkeit. Zarter Duft strömt dem Blut in Kleid.
So we have someone here who apparently wants to demonstrate what a beta is.
Blumenlein.
So we'll go to
Und das heißt
and I'll get rid of it.
Erika.
Interesting.
2020.
All right, I'll send
Toby.
guys again.
I would love to hear Toby's thoughts on all this. That'd be fantastic.
Okay, can you guys just mute for a second? I've got the information.
Sure.
just want to say thank you for the idiot troll, Will, I thought it was a different Will. So sorry about that guy coming on who apparently wanted to give us a firsthand demonstration of what a true beta really is. Someone who has no regard whatsoever for other people's streams, who just comes in and shits them up with irrelevant garbage. So thanks a lot, asshole, for showing us your true colors. And we really appreciate the learning opportunity that you've provided for all the viewers now. So thanks a lot. So yeah, unfortunately, when you have a semi-open channel, that's sort of par for the course. It's something that you can't really avoid. But I think alpha qualities sort of, you show your alphaness by how you deal with this type of, I wouldn't even call it opposition, because like I've said numerous times, you know, if you want to oppose me in a valuable way, you're going to defeat my ideas. And this type of shenanigan kind of shows that these people have no arguments against my ideas. They're just pissed that they're not the supreme alpha like I am. So yeah, sorry about that, Doovid. I thought it was Will to Power. It was the other Will, the wannabe God knows what poser loser who thinks that he's owed to coming on the stream and just shitting it up with his garbage.
Well, did you want to play that beta trade clip?
Sure, I'll go over to that. Someone said maybe there was an issue. It might get reported for, I don't know, because we're streaming. Do you think there's any risk of him reporting the channel for streaming? Because, I mean, he's clipping someone else's stuff, so it's not really his material, is it?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, you don't have to if you don't want.
I'll just play like maybe a minute of it. So if you guys just want to stay muted for another minute, I'll play a tiny bit of it. I don't know when this gets good because I've stopped watching these shows. Like, I don't really care what this idiot wants to say about me. He's obviously a troublemaker. He's accused me of reporting his channel numerous times, where it's like, not really in the habit of reporting channels. I just don't care enough about these things to report channels. And, you know, if I did report a channel, wouldn't that be sort of indicating that I was afraid of what was on it? And I'm not really afraid of any of these idiot beta tier strategies for undermining me. So I'll just quickly play a little bit of it, and well, hopefully that'll be entertaining for the audience.
And it's, God forbid, a tag team of dominatrixes. So what they do agree on is ripping betas. So like Jen and Claire are both extremely good at giving whips to betas, and they can collaborate on basically commentary of the betas. Not commentary of the betas, commentary of the betas. No, they're just trading betas, Elliot. Like, obviously they're both recruiting betas for their own purposes. So Claire and Jen will get together, and it's like trading baseball cards. They trade betas.
No, I don't want Gandalf at all. Please.
Like,
She wants will to power.
And Jennifer,
No.
like, I'll give you Domingo and Ghost, and like then you negotiate the bargain deals for the beta trades.
For Kade. Well, right now they can't decide who gets Kade.
Claire, you're up to
All right, so I think that's about enough of that. Is this the stream that got taken down? Oh, he's back. Thanks a lot for coming back and ruining the stream again, asshole.
Boring listening to something that's already, you know, occurred.
Why don't you get the fuck off my stream, beta?
How about we have a debate?
How
You
about
said I can't disprove your
Get
ideas.
the fuck off my stream and talk to me privately, and we can set up a scheduled debate rather than ruining the week in review, asshole.
Well, I'm defending my honor. Isn't this all about honor?
No.
Honor, the
We
glue
can
that binds.
Stupid. Part of honor is respecting other people's boundaries. You aren't doing that. Why should I give a shit about your honor?
Boom.
You don't know who you're dealing with, asshole. You think you can come in here, piss all over the floor, and there's no fucking consequences? Don't talk to me. Get off the fucking stream. Come and talk to me some other time. Then we'll have the structured debate. This is not the place for that.
Well, I mean, you you're making your stream all about running people who oppose you, their names through the mud.
No,
So you have like, you're like, challenge me. My knowledge is true. And debate, if you have to disprove this axiom of my logical system, and you've set it up in a way where it's so retarded and easy to disprove, but
somehow no one
you're
can
too
do it,
stupid to understand
they're
it.
stuck coming on my stream and singing songs when they weren't invited and they're not wanted. Yeah, that's how bad my arguments are. They're so bad no one can defeat them. Nice job, Beta. Do you have some kind of public humiliation fetish? Is that what you're all about? You want mommy to spank you in public? Is that it?
Jen lays it down.
See, this is the true nature of your intellectualism.
Yeah,
talking about
of your beta
alphas and betas, which was like some report from the. It was some. Do you even know where alpha and beta entered the American lexicon?
Yeah, nobody.
Does it matter? Does it matter?
Cares, dude.
I'm not sure it matters.
Yeah, the first principle of a topic of discussion doesn't matter, does it?
You're a bitter, jaded beta. That's it. I mean, if you have something to say and you're actually a respectful human being and you have something to contribute, that's a whole different story than being an ass. So try not being an ass. That's, can you reach for that? She has a great point. You're coming on the stream, you're useless being a dick. So do you have something valuable to say to contribute to the conversation? Or are you just going to be a douchebag?
I have simply been a mirror to Jen's narcissism.
Oh, for God's sake. Here we go.
No one asked you. No one asked you to calibrate what you think is her narcissism and what you should do in return for that. No one asked you. Go away, start your own stream, and you can do that there. So unless
that's the basis of this proposed platform, is it not?
So what is your justification for even thinking that?
Did you look at the name of the stream by any chance?
Week in Review.
Right. So the point of people coming on here is to talk about what they're doing this week. You didn't do that. You came on and started singing a song. Thus, you're not interested in furthering the conversation. You're interested in derailing it for your own selfish, narcissistic
streams
purposes.
that you have been on, and they've been like, the basis of your philosophy is because you have knowledge you've gained through like several reincarnations. So that knowledge is innate. So knowledge equals knowledge.
And where'd you get yours? And what's your basis of knowledge? And where do you think you're so important that you have the right to interject?
Nay, you don't even understand.
No,
what the
I don't.
Fuck I'm talking about. So.
I'm asking you what you think that your knowledge is, where you're a helpful fucking component to the cog in the wheel here. Explain yourself. If you want to come on and be a twat, explain yourself. And then.
Well, I know that Doooovid is an intelligent man. I don't understand how he has been tricked into believing the woo that Jen is pushing. You've obviously drinking the Kool-Aid.
Okay, well, why don't you ask Doooovid instead of coming on and acting like a twat? Why don't you directly ask Doooovid what he thinks about that, like I have, instead of being an uneducated retard?
Yeah, I'm not sure what you're referring to, or if it even pays and saying you just have a personality conflict or some sort of issues, as opposed to what ideas are you trying to forward, what goals are you trying to accomplish. You're more dealing with is this personality good or bad, which isn't really part of my calculation. You're saying, okay, is it possible that Jennifer is falsely portraying herself, and she's portraying herself to be something in reality is not accurate?
No, Doooovid, no.
As opposed to
I am arguing
association. What are you trying
I am arguing
to gain out of
against
this
Jen's
association?
ideas. Jen is when I come. Then when I come on,
Why are you arguing
it's-
against Jen's ideas? Are you saying what?
because they're
because they're wrong or something? Is that what you do with your time?
foundation on
You
which they
argue with-
rest.
You argue with people's ideas that are
Oh,
wrong.
great. And he shared the link with Domingo. Wonderful. How classy.
I can separate a person's ideas from their personality.
Clearly you can't, because you have just disgraced
Doovid.
yourself by coming on and ruining this stream right now. So
He
thanks
didn't
a
come
lot.
on with ideas, right, Jen? He didn't come on with ideas. He came on with insults.
He
and
came
attack.
on and started singing, which derailed the conversation. And this is the point that I'm making. If you don't
Even if you asked, you're saying like maybe we would have let you sing a song if you came on. I mean, I don't know if that was German you were saying.
Yeah,
again?
Duvid enjoyed my song, right?
Well, I thought it was Yiddish, but then I saw it wasn't Yiddish; it was German. You could have said why you wanted to sing the song, what the song was, what the purpose, what you thought, the adding to the conversation, or we could psychoanalyze and try to determine why you're doing what you're doing. And you're saying if you're a purpose-driven person, or if you're a destructive, essentially a destructive personality that is bringing negative energy and not bringing anything positive to the venue.
Well, you believe in Hinduism, and one must destroy first in order to build.
Yeah, I mean Shiva, Vishnu, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, but
I embody the universe.
Oh,
I don't know why I do the shit that I do.
You don't know, and you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know the first thing about what you're talking about. If you did, you'd have shown respect towards me, which you have failed to do so far.
You have no authority, Jen.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. Saying why wouldn't you show respect to the host? It doesn't be like you're coming into a place, you're a guest in someone else's space. Why wouldn't you be respectful to the host? And so if you have a reason that saying you're at either a state of war or you're a state of conflict where you can't even be respectful of the host, and you feel obligated to be in a place of conflict, what's going on with you? Why are you such a conflicted person that you have to be in a situation where you can't even be respectful to the person that's hosting you?
Doovid.
Domingo.
Like Becky, like Domingo.
You were not addressed, Domingo. Go ahead, Will. Answer the question.
Exactly.
Like
Respectfully decline and allow
nobody wants you here. Nobody wants either of you guys here. You're coming where you're not.
You're just trying to take over the space. They're saying something like, "Now
Doovid.
your channel is now my channel, and you're going to direct the conversation in whichever way you choose because you're dominant." And that's what you're here to demonstrate, that you could pop onto a stream uninvited and take it over and just rape and pillage the countryside because you have Epsteinian fantasies that you're trying to fulfill on this stream.
Well, I would blame it on, in my subconscious is lurking the fact that I watched the HBO series John Adams today.
And so that's why you're trying to fulfill your Epsteinian fantasies on Church of Entropy's stream.
I'm not trying to rape any of you.
Well, what exactly are you trying to do? You're trying to expose me?
Doovid.
You're both just making such fools of yourselves. You don't appear to give a shit what anyone thinks about you. You have no self-respect, and yet you are demanding that people listen to your judgments on me. Like, it's ridiculous. You're doing it completely backwards.
I'm not demanding anything. I mean,
well, then why
you
do
have the ability. You have the ability to click a button and immediately kick me from the stream and allow me no
I cannot
voice.
kick people from the stream. I don't know how to do it, so I would like you to just leave.
Well, I mean, you just click on the arrow next to their name, and there should be an eject option.
Yeah, I don't see it. I'm sorry. There's no option to do that here. I can't eject people, so I have to start another.
On your Hangouts?
Yeah, I'll have to start another conversation on Hangouts and invite you guys to that.
So your ignorance is my advantage. So I should seek to gain.
You're an asshole. How about you just be nice?
Toby, do you hear me?
I am being nice.
Yeah, just
Toby?
advantage. Oh, you can't.
Yeah, I can hear you.
You're gonna ruin the whole stream. Just like have something in.
For some reason, everybody else is ignoring you, though.
No, they're not. It's just
Jen's.
you're a twat.
Jen has a
Hello. I'm not sure if the audience can hear us or not. I'm not sure if the audience can hear us or not. Yeah, it looks like we're coming through okay. Can you just tell us, can the audience just tell us if they can hear us in the chat real quick? I'm really sorry about this, you guys. You can hear, okay, it looks like they can hear us awesome, so we'll go back to the main show. And I'll try to set this up so that people can see the video call. Yeah, this is just really, I'm sorry to the audience for this. This is really cringe. Yeah, so we've got Gandalf on the show. Thanks so much for joining. I don't know if you were listening before to what was going on, but yeah, just the usual run-of-the-mill beta squad being triggered for reasons. So yeah. How's everyone doing today?
Oh, I'm actually today. A couple days ago were really bad. Today was actually really good.
Okay, my thing's frozen, so I'm just gonna restart. But you guys go ahead and talk.
Yeah, here,
okay.
you could do your week in review, Gandalf. I guess you got your own channel running. You did a stream with Jennifer. So if you want to say maybe you thought about what we talked about last week or a few weeks ago about kind of like applying academic thinking to what are you streaming, who's your target audience, what do you want to accomplish, type things, and how that's going.
I think part of it is and I took a slight detour from that only because I kind of want to establish in certain crowds, you know, that I'm a little bit different, that I talk to people and then it's okay. You know, a lot of people are upset that I talk to Rufus Cat because he's part Jewish. And I'm like, no.
Well, who is, you're talking about established to people in real life that that you're streaming, or you're talking about established to people that may have seen you on Claire or my or Jennifer's stream?
Yes.
Who are you trying to establish something to, and what's the
it's to establish to the streaming community that I'm a serious thinker. I mean, I was on Luke Ford's chat today for a while when he did a thing on Heidegger, which was really awesome. And you were
Luke, on his show live, or you were in his live
chat. I got a wrench because Luke Ford saw that the few other times I've been on, Brundlefly was picking at me, and I said, well, I would say in the chat that Brundlefly is not my friend. I mean, he says terrible things about me, and he seems to hate me. So whatever. I'm not going to forgive that because I just don't. I mean, fine, but I want other people to see that when you actually talk to me one-on-one, no matter who it is, whether it's Rufus or it's Norvin or it's Jen, or it's Daniel, I mean, I can develop one-on-one relationships with people. And I think academic discussions one-on-one with people, perhaps one-on-two, are going to be the format I go forward with. But I kind of want people to see me as a serious thinker and not just as a Babs caster or a shit talker or throwing around insults. Now, I do go, when I am on like the Wignat streams, I kind of enjoy the entertainment of it. And I enjoy absolutely never backing down when they make all these comments about me because they don't like who I talk to or my personality or whatnot. And it's like, I don't go on to I don't let you come onto my channel and talk to me and say terrible things about me. And I don't say terrible things about you first. So I just kind of show them that, people are going to behave with respect on the internet, because it's also a public forum, and we're going to act in public forums with public decorum. And but I'm also never going to back down when people like show me no honor.
What's the logic? Is okay if you're trying to establish your own medium, make your own connections, advance associations that are beneficial to you, versus kind of like this not backing down. You got disputes that have to be settled, which will likely be endless because the conflict is endless and the disputes will be endless, as opposed to just trying to move forward with what you want to accomplish. That are you actually likely to finalize these things? You're going to prove to a bunch of people something that aren't interested in what you have to say or what you have to prove, or you think that there's some level of resolution that you're going to get to this, and these people will, see your persona of Gandalf doesn't back down, and what benefit is that going to give you in advancing your goals in conversation? Or are they too divergent? It's just part of your personality, like you don't back down, and this conflict must be resolved, and you're willing to expend enormous amounts of energy trying to push forward on these conflicts you've developed from your personality.
Well, I mean, my personality and my real personality aren't quite as different as people think. I mean, I'm a very polite person most of the time, but I don't take people insulting me ever. I mean, Jennifer and I are a little more alike than I think I used to believe on this, but I have my own thing with it. Like,
what does that mean? It means that the kid who insulted you in 3rd grade, that you're still trying to ruin his life, or what does it mean? You don't.
Well, 3rd grade is a little too long, but in this current climate, do not. When I'm trying to do good by most people, and I have my own approach to the world. It's my own unique view. It doesn't really fit with any. I don't think I really fit into any established category that.
So you have like a little book of like everyone who's ever wronged you, and like you have to like make sure that you get back at them or something. It doesn't make sense.
I have an enemies list. I do, because I know what people say about me online, and you and Jennifer are probably never going to be on it, but a lot of these other people decided to be on it, and not a good decision on their part.
Because like God forbid, like like people end up dead or something like that, or is
no,
like,
it's not about that.
What you escalate conflict?
They need to show respect me, and I'm not going to ever allow disrespect. That's just not how I operate. Because if men in general, but white men in particular, I think, based on just where the culture is, continue just to tolerate cucking each other and fighting with each other like they're 5-year-olds, it's just it devalues all the men of any tribe who do anything that's noble. And so I'm going to police that shit because I just hate it. I want people to behave better. And I used to be a school teacher. It was very popular, very kind, but people knew not to cross me and disobey my rules. And my rules were usually only like 3 or 4. It's basically respect, honor, loyalty, and do your work.
Hey guys, sorry about my browser froze, so I just had to restart it real quick. I am sorry again to the audience for the interruption. Hopefully it doesn't happen again. This is just one of the issues that comes along with having a more or less open stream. Sometimes you get shitheads coming on trying to derail it. So yeah, just to answer the question about whether this is like us getting back at people for slights back in the 3rd grade, I'm sure we are to some extent shaped by the experiences of our childhood. But the way I look at it is, I've learned a lot. I want to put the stuff I learned when I was a kid and when I was younger into practice. And that is basically what I'm doing now. Like, it's show respect. I'm all about reciprocity. Like I want to have great conversations with intellectual peoples. I make no secret of that, and it's totally fine by me. But no, I don't really feel like I've got some grudge based on some bully that beat me up in grade school. Like that didn't really happen too much to me.
Or even the person who trolled you just recently. I mean, saying like Gandalf seems like, it just seems kind of awkward or counterproductive. Like, I will demonstrate that you cannot get away with that. When it's saying like, well, yeah, it seems like people could probably disrespect you and get away with it. It doesn't seem reasonable to demand respect from people. You could demand that people, don't damage you, but it seems unreasonable to demand respect from people. And then if you're going to make it like a mission to try to like seek some sort of retributive justice against the people who you think didn't give you your due respect, especially in the streaming sphere, it seems endless. Like that will be what the majority be like. Jennifer saying like, these 2 people who trolled my stream, I demand retributive justice. They did not give me the due respect. So like, what are you going to do with it? You're just going to move on and try to have productive conversations, or are you going to try to seek out some sort of retributive justice against those people for not giving you the respect you think you deserve?
Well, I can only get retributive justice on the psychic and spiritual plane because I have no legitimate power. But if I did have legitimate power, some of the things these people said about me, I'll never forgive. I'm just not a forgiving person because I actually am very kind. And I don't like when I'm a kind person and I extend the olive branch, you know, and people spit at me, that's just not forgivable. Then I'm cruel forever to that person, because that's just my mentality. Because what we have to have, if we're going to have like learned men have authority again in a corrupt society, is that learned people need to be accorded respect for the lifetime of learning that they've done. I mean, all I've spent my life doing and all I've sacrificed for is just to spend more time learning. I mean, you talk with me for a little bit of time and you realize, damn, this person really is well read and has a very deep and nuanced perspective, and is also willing to learn new perspectives. I mean, I show people that I can both teach and learn. I mean, the stream I had with Jennifer, I mean, and some of the other streams I've held in the past show that, you know, I am a thinker. And, you know, if you dialogue with me in a way in which there's back and forth and reciprocity, things are cool, real easy. I'm a pretty chill person. It's these kind of wignat tier people that I just find absolutely repulsive. I find them to be just the lowest scum you can imagine. I mean, these neo-Nazi LARPer type people are absolutely disgusting. They're the filth and scum of the earth, and they're the worst people imaginable.
Yeah, I'm not really looking to like get revenge on every last person who's ever slighted me. My vibe is I want to protect innocent people from predators. So someone like Domingo isn't too much of a risk. I mean, he does sort of have some type of following, but I think they kind of, in light of my appearance, they kind of see that he's a shyster and he's not really interested in the things he claims to be interested in. This other guy, I don't even know him, so I'm going to forget about him in 10 seconds. I'm not like running a retribution campaign. I just think people should realize that if you act horribly, I'm not going to forget that. And I'm probably not going to want to talk to you anymore. And it's going to be your own damn fault. So before you want to come in and start shitting all over my stream, maybe actually have an argument and don't do it in the wrong, like this is not the time for that. Like it was the same with Fellow Man when he came on to Week in Review and he wanted to talk Talmud. It's like, this is not the time for that. Oh God, here we go again.
Okay. Oh, that's too loud, Rabbi. Too loud. Please. Yeah, turn that down.
Okay, I guess it's the same link from before and people are just sharing it with everyone. So I got to figure out how to block people, but I guess we'll just...
Please turn that down, Rabbi. Please turn that down. Please mute yourself. But I can't hear Jennifer speak.
Yeah, sorry about this, guys. I'll just wrap it up for now, and I'll figure out a way to be able to block these people in the future. So thanks, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll see you real soon.
See you. Bye-bye.